Welcome to the Growth Matters podcast. My name is Justice. Growth Matters podcast covers elements such as faith, family, and finances. Today's episode is Coaching Christian Leaders in Ministry. The Journal of Applied Christian Leadership book review of the Coach Model of Christian Leaders by Keith Weber, a professional certified coach, addresses four essential topics. Weber says he suggests that four main aspects of coaching. One is listening to others. Two, asking questions. Three, allowing others to find their solutions. And four, allowing others to feel empowered to take action. That allows for self-discovery and suggests that adults learn best this way. Reverend Maggie Lewis, Executive Director at the Center for Career Development and Ministry, and Reverend Hannah Anderson, a professional certified coach, will share their thoughts and insights on coaching Christian leaders. It is a pleasure to have both of you with us today on the Growth Matters podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Before we start the conversation, would you both share a little bit about yourself for our listening audience?
Okay. I'm Maggie Lewis, and I grew up in Southern Connecticut. I went to Eastern University, which was Eastern College in Pennsylvania back in the day, which is an American Baptist college, followed by Eastern Baptist Seminary, where I have a Master of Divinity. I've pastored churches in Vermont and Connecticut and spent 11 years in New York City on the executive staff of MMBB, which is the financial services retirement savings for clergy within the American Baptist Churches USA. And while there, I earned an MBA from Cornell. I have been director of the Center for Career Development and Ministry since 2012, after having been a client 3 times.
Okay, great.
Appreciate being here today.
Thank you.
That's good. Thanks.
Reverend Anderson?
Yeah, I'm Hannah Anderson. I grew up actually as a Quaker, and at age 33 had an unexpected call into the Episcopal Church. So as a result of that, I went to seminary at University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, did my studying there, and then began serving as a priest in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania. From there, went to the Diocese of New York and served both in a parish and on the diocesan staff as canon for congregational development. I got my doctorate from Seabury Western in advanced studies of congregational development, which has been inordinately helpful in my work as a coach. And then I served in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, in an urban setting as a priest. And then I went to New Hampshire and served as canon to the ordinary, essentially, a support for the bishop in New Hampshire, and served there for 10 years before I retired in 2018. So when I retired, Justice, I decided that I would do life coaching and was certified Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching in the Massachusetts area. And I work with people going through some sort of transition. So I would say about half of my clients are clergy, and half of them either are out of the church or don't want to even talk about faith. They might talk about their spiritual lives, but they're still going through transition and need support. Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Could you please share a little bit about the Center of Career Development?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. Back in 1968, the American Baptist Churches USA joined with several other denominations to create 3 centers across the country that would be there to support clergy throughout the different stages of their careers. And so we have been around for over 50 years. There's now 2 American Baptist centers in the country, ours and one in the Chicago area, and 2 or 3 other centers that are not, that are not affiliated with that original, but we are all part of something called the Ministry Development Council. We have programming at, as I said, at all stages of a minister's life. I think the first time clergy are introduced to us is that they come to us for what is called a candidate assessment. They're adjudicatory, their denomination sends them before they are ordained to meet with a psychologist and vocational counselor to discern their readiness for ministry. We aren't the gatekeepers. We are not going to say yay or nay to someone's candidacy, but we are working with the candidate to make sure that they are psychologically sound. And not just that, but we have two in the candidate programs. We really have two clients. We have the adjudicatory of the denomination, but we also have the client themselves who we want to use the experience of that candidate program to set them up for success in their first call. And so that's a lot of the time we spend with them in the 2 days, is so that they're going to have a successful first call, we hope. We also do programs for people who are mid-career or about to retire. We have something called a transitional program for those who want to transition out of ministry. But I would say the major piece of our work right now, Justice, is ministry coaching. That's where we are working with most of our clients. I think we've brought on over 100 this year, in this past year, for ministry coaching, and just finding that people are needing that added support, and that coaching is a tool that can be very valuable to them as they navigate some very challenging waters in ministry world right now.
Yes, and I would, especially the last 4 or 5 years dealing with COVID and those types of things.
That
Um,
really, we were seeing a lot of burnout before then. I think you were too, Hannah, but
Yeah,
COVID put the nail in the coffin.
man.
Yeah, exhaustion
Really
level
did.
went way up. Politics, the political landscape has continued to create a lot of stress in the system.
as a certified coach, Reverend Anderson, what have you seen lately? You know, a lot of stress, a lot of it, because I guess PTSD is something big now with clergy. And what are some of the things have you been seeing?
Well, it certainly can be. I think re-traumatization as well. So if
Hmm.
somebody has any sort of trauma in their history, it gets reignited when there are things happening in the world or within the life of a congregation. I spoke with a woman today who is going through that very thing because a trauma that she had in her own life is being repeated in the life of one of her parishioners. So, in order to stay present for somebody, she really needs to manage her own self care. And that's a lot of what coaching is about, just helping people stay healthy,
Uh-huh.
nourished. They need the spiritual stream as well as giving it to others or
Hmm.
providing it, but they need it. So helping people discover what it is that really keeps them afloat. So I am seeing PTSD or re-traumatization. I'm also seeing a great deal of fatigue and hopelessness and disillusionment. So these are things that are real right now for pastors and for people in Christian community. When you look at the world with things going on, how do you make sense of that theologically? Can you make sense of that theologically? And most of all, how do you live through it as part of Christian community? And so what I'm noticing is that some of the structures we have in place for our churches really are not serving people well right now. Either buildings are old and need a lot of repair, or just the way that people worship, the configuration needs to shift in order to really support the mission and the heart of Christ in the world. So there are lots of different factors. There's no stable ground really, other than our belief in Christ, helping us through this time. A lot of wilderness experiences and references in coaching right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about, speaking of seminary, young seminarians coming out, are they looking to be pastors now? Do you find that are they having some challenges as well as some of the experienced pastors that's been around dealing with, we had the pandemic. People wanted to wear masks. Some maybe didn't want to wear a mask. How do you handle that? Because
That was a
seminary didn't,
challenging time.
yeah, seminary didn't teach you
Have a
how to
course
deal
on
with some
that.
of that and how to manage this administration and all these different
No.
personalities. You're like, well, I just want to preach. I want to teach the Bible,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. But there's a
No.
lot of other
Yeah.
pieces. And then how do I balance managing my personal life, my self-care, and all of that? I mean, are you finding many different facets happening now than probably 4 or 5, beyond 5 years ago in ministry, dealing with distress?
I think so.
Okay.
Maggie, I don't know what your thought on
Well,
it
I would
is,
just say
but
I think that's the beauty of coaching because you can't,
yeah.
first of all, you can't learn everything you need to know in seminary, but
Yeah.
certainly the kinds of things you've mentioned and what we've experienced in the last 4 or 5 years wasn't going to be taught in seminary. I think that's the beauty of coaching and working with one of our talented coaches like Hannah um,
Mhm.
to address the immediacy of whatever it is and with working within a congregation because yes, that was a stressful time. That
Very.
whole mask or not mask, vaccinated or not vaccinated. Do we stay on Zoom or do we go back in person? And I was a pastor at the time. That was very, very difficult.
And,
Mhm.
and speaking of that, do you go hybrid after when they open things back up? Getting people back into the sanctuary and getting back into, I guess, if we call a normal flow from what it used to be before COVID. People feel comfortable, safe, those kinds of things. So it's a lot of stress that you had to deal with. I mean, do you see some pastors was like, wow, this is burnout after, 6 months of doing this, just me and 5 or 6 other people in the sanctuary to do a service? Did you find,
Mhm.
a lot of fatigue and stress doing that? Because it became a lot of work, additional work, I would think, to organize the order of worship and really run it to a way that was different than having all these other people and facets involved in the service.
Mhm.
Did you
Yeah,
find?
it took a lot of what I would call adaptive leadership.
Okay.
Yes. And I think that's really key for pastors right now is to know how to pivot. When
Mm-hmm.
these things happen, all of a sudden, instead of 250 people, you have 5 in the sanctuary trying to figure out how to do this. So the key is how can you adapt? How can you be flexible and creative and filled with grace?
Yes.
That's the key. That's
Mm-hmm.
the key. So that you're not, you're not irritating one another. You're trying to lean in together into God's grace, believing that you can still be faithful uh, to the Holy God on Zoom. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it was a such a pivot and shift for people to figure out, for the example, in the Episcopal Church, how do you do Holy Communion on Zoom? Can you still bless the elements? Will they still be, blessed elements by people?
Yeah.
All sorts of interesting theological questions began to arise. And I think so many people managed beautifully, and it took a toll. It took a toll. So that
Okay.
pastors, after COVID, when congregations began to come back into their buildings, pastors were exhausted and needed time away. Some of them decided it was time to leave their congregations.
Mm-hmm.
There were different measures of leaving and or retreating in order to kind of find a new ground. But I would say now a lot of congregations are still not back to what we would consider normal. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure that we'll know what's normal.
Yeah.
People are finding a new path. Yeah.
Did you find that across the denominations, Baptist, Episcopal, Pallian, um, Methodist, you know, Pentecostal, they were all pretty much feeling the same type of stress per se?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we work with numerous different denominations, and I would say that it was pretty commonplace. Yeah. But Hannah brought up something about the blessing of the elements. That's something we American Baptists didn't have to worry about, but I had thought about that for Episcopalians. We had a whole other set of concerns. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the other things have you kind of experienced and seen in coaching Christian leaders, pastors, and trying to be creative in, after you've been there 2 or 3 years in your congregation? What do you do for the next step to be creative, that bring the innovation, the energy, and what are some of the things you kind of teach and coach minister pastors to look at? And do you put a plan together for beyond 3 years, or how you want to look at your faith walk
Yeah.
with your congregation?
Well, I think it's really important for pastors to understand that there is a life cycle
Hmm. Okay.
in a congregation, just like a human life cycle, but there is a life cycle, so that maybe you're at a point of joy and fulfillment and resurrection, and then something happens in the life of the congregation, and it might just be that time wears on and things feel the same, or it could be a crisis, who knows, but there's a shift in the life cycle, and you move into a place of some death and loss and grief. And that is totally normal.
Okay.
And pastors and leaders don't want to acknowledge that. But listen, we are baptized into the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus.
Hmm.
So if that's true, then why wouldn't we expect that we will go through a cycle similar to his? And that's part of what I lift up in coaching. When people come to me and they're lost, they're in wilderness, they're in grief, we look at something called the Gospel Cycle of Living by the Reverend Eric Law through the Kaleidoscope Project in California. And it is an awesome tool for people to become familiar with. And it's just a way of understanding that a congregation grows and ebbs and grows and ebbs and deepens. It's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to learn to adjust your leadership style depending on what cycle the congregation's in.
Mhm.
So let's say that you might have a preferred style might be collaborative, where you like to work with people, and then something happens and somebody has crossed a boundary and you realize you have to be more authoritarian or direct. It might feel uncomfortable, but that's what's called for. So we look at the life cycle of the congregation and the leadership style of the pastor to see, is this a match right now, or does the leader need to shift his or her approach with this? It's a really important ingredient. And I would say the other thing that pastors are not comfortable with, but it's essential, is to know how to deal with conflict.
Yes.
Conflict is inevitable.
It's going to be there whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and it's all part of growth. So how do pastors understand and deal with conflict? And oftentimes it means kind of looking at one's own life and saying, oh, I grew up with parents who were either never in conflict or always in conflict, to get some self-awareness about how we respond. And the whole goal is to respond, not to react. If we can help pastors respond thoughtfully, then that will help de-escalate conflict.
Conflict. Okay.
I don't know. Those are some of the things. Maggie, what would you say?
I was just thinking, pastors are often people pleasers. And that's a
Uh,
challenge in a congregation because we want to be loved, we want to be admired, we want to be,
Mhm.
and that's something certainly to work on. But you were talking about a life cycle of a congregation. Um, Brilliant, because yes, there is. I would say to add that there's sort of a life cycle of a pastor's career too, and don't wait until you are in crisis to seek out
yeah.
coaching. We
Mhm.
can It can be of value to you at any point in a career, but not when you're in a crisis mode. That's going to be harder to dig out of that ditch. Um, we've found over the years that sometimes people will say, "Oh, I went to the Center for Ministry for the candidate program. Phew, I'm done." No, there's many points during our ministries when having that kind of coaching support is going to be so valuable
Yeah.
to folks. And don't wait till it's gonna. I don't. It's never too late, but don't wait till you're burned out and fried before you come seeking something.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a real good point when you talk about the life cycle coming before you get fried. But I think it's a good point for pastors now dealing with how do we increase spiritually the development of the congregation we have and also grow it numerically because I think that's where you maybe need some help and bounce some ideas off a coach and kind of help you through that, especially when we're looking at the times and we're looking at now where okay, COVID has really decreased the people sitting in the pews. You have hybrid, but now I'm coming into a congregation that it's not, we need to add some more seats, people to add to keep it going because of the age. People are getting older now. Some congregations are much older. They don't have as many younger people in the 30s to 50s. So
Oh, but
how?
that's a ministry opportunity, Justice. The
Oh
people
yes,
It
who
is.
are
yes,
older,
yes, yes.
I, I,
But I'm
I
saying how to
don't.
help the coach, help that pastor coach through that. Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
numeric growth. I would say to people, um, you send your child to a school and you love that there's a small classroom, right? You don't
Hmm.
want to send your child to a huge classroom. Small churches have their place and their value. So I don't want to discount that.
Oh no,
that.
I'm not discounting. I think we need to grow it spiritually, spiritually
Mhm.
grow the people, but also,
Absolutely.
add
Absolutely.
some numerical because you want to have. When you talk about the life cycle, I'm thinking of all different generations because we don't want
Mhm.
to just be just more just more, majority of it 60 and older, and we're missing the 18-year-olds and 15-year-olds and in the 30s or 50s in between. If a pastor does walk into that, that would be a good time to talk to a coach and how create some ways to be engaging and innovative in their ministry.
Mhm.
No bad time to talk to a coach.
Okay. But what would you suggest to someone that's maybe looking at that kind of situation where they're trying to say, oh, we need more young people, we're trying to get more age, and then also help them incorporate the new people with the existing people because that can bring tension as well. Have you
Mhm.
run
Mhm.
across that in coaching pastors, leaders in that type of situation? Because the people that's been there, well, we might not want to change anything. We want to keep it the way it is. But new people come in,
Absolutely.
they want new
Yeah.
ideas, new, innovative, something different to
Mhm.
meet their needs, because for instance, many people I notice in their 30s, they don't carry cash. If you have Cash App,
Mhm.
Givelify, a text to give,
Mhm.
Mhm.
how do we
Yeah.
adapt, bringing those changes in to a situation where,
Right.
they just always been passing the plate. Oh, you mailed the check in, something
Mhm.
simple to that effect. I mean,
They
how
want
can
that
Yeah.
QR code.
yes, yeah. So how do you, as you coach, as a pastor coming to you, what's some of the things you would help them coach them along and how to integrate the new and the existing?
Well,
So,
what I often talk with with pastors about, justice, is how to form leadership teams or small groups with representatives from all of those age groups, all of
Hmm.
those generations. It's some
Okay.
very creative worship, but you have to have dialogue. You have to have conversation to get to know one another,
Hmm.
um, to just become friends, and learn to care for one another, and then to be able to joke with each other. I think that's always a huge sign of trust when you can kind of joke about one generation needing the QR code and the other generation wanting to write out the paper check still,
Hmm.
and find out, okay, well, then what do we do? What do we do to uh, for the offering? And I think it's a moment of curiosity. Like if you can help people stay curious and open to
Okay.
possibility, I think there's huge gift in working with generations, among generations. Um, yeah, it's one of those places where people who have always been in a congregation might be threatened when newer people arrive, but it's also an incredible opportunity to build relationships across different lines.
Hmm.
And that's the adaptive leadership. That's the adaptive leadership.
Leadership.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
some of the ways you see of helping pastors might want to transition from being a pastor, maybe become a life coach or do something else in ministry, a different call? How does that,
Mhm.
have you had any experience in giving coaching that way and some of the things to think
Yep.
about in discerning that? Is there something you can
I,
share?
I would go with, I have a few clients right now who are thinking that exact thing,
Mm.
really holding that in discernment. Do I stay in ministry, or is it time for me to leave or consider a different option? So what I would say is that God calls us in lots of different ways. And where does your heart find a home? Is it in the life of a congregation? Is it possibly coaching with individual people?
Mm.
Is it in education with children? Where does your heart want to belong? And where is the energy wanting to flow? So for me, it's a deeply internal search for discernment. And it also includes other people. If you're continually hitting a point of friction within the congregation and nothing seems to be changing, that could be a point of discernment to be able to say, okay, I've tried a lot of different things. I've tried over a few years of approaching this differently, and nothing is shifting, and my energy and interests are going somewhere else. It's a moment of discernment, but we pray together, we listen together. People do not act quickly. I really encourage people to take time and think about these things prayerfully before they make a decision. But there are pastors who are saying maybe something else would be a better fit for me.
Mhm. Okay.
Maggie,
And
what would you say?
yeah.
Um, I think that what you've outlined is really ideal, Hannah. And we offer the possibility of someone coming, if they would choose to, just come for a day and spend time with one of our vocational counselors and get away from their
Mhm.
workspace. Uh, the pros and cons of doing that kind of program. It's a one and done, or doing an ongoing coaching relationship, where, say, I meet with Hannah one week and we have 2 weeks in between that I can practice some of the things that she and I have discussed. So there's, two ways within our center that someone who is looking for a transition in their ministry or career can go about it. Both have a lot of value.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
just
Oh,
depends on what would be feel good for the person at the time. Some people do need to step away, just get out of
They
their
do.
place of ministry and maybe take a day and drive up to see us. And that can be valuable just to step away.
step away.
Mhm. Mhm.
because I know you had mentioned earlier in your um Maggie, when you talked about you work with the financial services at MMBB, and do you let people know there's other ways to continue to do ministry outside of just being at the local church, pastoral ministry? Is there different careers they can look at in
Sure.
doing ministry? And
I was a client twice in my career when I was looking for the what's next, and I came to the center.
mhm,
Uh, and they used some instruments with me for skill finders and strong inventory of skills, and helped me understand that certain skills that I had developed and polished in ministry setting can be rolled over and applied to other settings. Maybe a museum director. I mean, who knew? I mean, just we
yeah.
we have so many skills that we build up as clergy, as pastors, that we don't realize can be useful in other settings and maybe be just what God is calling us to. I mean, there's ways to do ministry outside of the church, and maybe God is calling you to something like that. But your ministry, your clergy skills that you've honed, can certainly be so effective and helpful elsewhere in other settings. And that's how we want to help people to identify those.
Do you have any comments on that, Hannah? Anything
Oh,
further?
I would just agree that there are many skills that we develop, and we tend to think that being faithful to God means to continue to be in an untenable situation in a church. And I just don't agree with that. It's really okay to shift
Mhm,
and to move on with your energy. And maybe the congregation needs that as well as a pastor. But taking time away is a really important ingredient in all of this. Um, yeah, and I mean, I used to always have alternatives to ministry tucked in my back pocket, just in case I had a bad day. Then I could think about working with inanimate objects at Pier 1. That would be like, oh, I want to work with beautiful inanimate objects who aren't difficult to deal with. And I would just let myself kind of play with that for a few days. And then I'd realize, that's not really where my heart is. But it's really good to give yourself permission to think outside the box.
mhm.
Hey, why not?
Great.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. Anything else before we wrap up the episode today that you'd like to share um, as we
Oh,
conclude
I
today?
do, because I've got an offer you can't resist,
Oh,
Justice.
all right.
We are able now through Lilly grant money that's available from MMBB to offer free coaching, free ministry coaching to people of any denomination.
Oh,
Have to be clergy or professional church leaders, but they can have up to 8 coaching sessions with one of our coaches like Hannah. And I've created a diverse team of people. People could check out our website at ccdmin.org and see our list of staff. But I have a diverse group. You've met Hannah, and she's top notch. Um,
Well, thank you.
we've got some other great people, but free coaching, Justice. And I don't
all
know how long
right.
this will last. I don't know how long that Lilly grant money is going to hold out. I think it'll be there for at least this year. And
Okay.
so, our clergy out there, any denomination who would like some free coaching sessions, just contact me directly. Um,
Hmm.
and email address is exec@ccdmin.org. Exec@ccdmin.org. I'll take good care of you. I will match you with a coach that I think will be a good fit. I'm a good matchmaker, and I haven't had anybody send back a coach yet.
All right. That's all right. We're batting 1,000. All
Yes,
right.
we are.
That's good. Anything would you like to add, Hannah, before we wrap up today?
No, no, it's been a delightful conversation. Thank you, Justice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Lewis and Reverend Anderson, for committing to assisting pastors, ministers, and lay leaders in their vocational direction and managing ministry and their family lives, because that's all important in
So,
ministry. I want to say thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the Growth Matters podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with your community. Yes, until the next time, stay focused, prepare, execute, and celebrate the victories as you continue to grow and develop in your life. I am your host, Justice, signing off. The Growth Matters podcast happens at MMTV, 360 Main Street, Melrose, Massachusetts. Thank you.